Hello, and welcome back to the True Seeker Spotlight interview. I'm Adam Jones, the Communications Director for the Tulsa County District Attorney. Today I have with me Assistant District Attorney Ashley Thompson, who is an attorney in our homicide unit. Ashley, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
So, Ashley, tell us a little bit about your background, why you decided to become a prosecutor.
So, growing up, this sounds kind of basic, but growing up, I was obsessed with crime stuff, even like as a little kid. And so, like, truly binging Law and Order, SVU, and things like that as a kid. And I remember thinking, probably as young as like seventh grade, like, wow, that's got to be the coolest job ever, to be either a cop or a lawyer that handles such terrible things. And so I pretty much knew from a very early age that I wanted to work in some capacity with law enforcement or as law enforcement, and then ended up going to law school and knew going in that I wanted to be a prosecutor.
Wow. And so did you intern with the office here, or what was your kind of journey?
So, yeah, I initially worked in tax law and some other areas, but my second year of law school, starting in 2016, I started at the office as an intern for Special Victims Unit, and this has been the only place I've worked since 2016.
Yeah. That's great. It's like the fulfillment of a mission for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, as soon as I started, I knew I'd never want to leave.
Great. Well, tell us, what does the homicide unit do?
So we handle, obviously, homicides, but that can encompass a variety of cases. So anything from your murder, first degrees, second degrees, things like that, spanning all the way to some of our, say, DUI manslaughters and things like that. So effectively, any form of homicide that we have.
Okay. What sort of trends have you been seeing? What kind of cases do you see pop up time and time again?
It's kind of hard to answer that because there's sort of a variety of categories, kind of, I would say, that I would categorize as maybe frequent flyers or just consistently pop up. DUI manslaughters are a huge consistency that we see last year and this year. That can also include manslaughters involving, say, reckless driving or very high rates of speed. So that's a consistent case type that we see come in year to year. In addition to that, there's always been and it kind of comes and goes in waves, but sort of gang-related homicides and things of that sort that come in on a fairly consistent basis, where at least that's an undertone to the case to a degree. I would say those are kind of our biggest areas you really kind of see repeats of for the most part.
Okay. So let's say we have a member of our community who's unfortunately a family member of somebody who's been the subject of a DUI manslaughter. What do you want that person and others like them to know about our office when they start this process with you?
And to answer your question, I think it sort of applies in any context of any homicide. The biggest things I'd say are, we have, across all of our agencies we work with, very diligent detectives and investigators who care. And our team of prosecutors here that handle these are the exact same way. The biggest thing I'd say for any family who's going through this process, be it at the investigative stage or prosecution stage involving a homicide, is just maintaining, focusing on themselves and understanding this process is a marathon and not a sprint. And so, sometimes we don't file charges overnight. That does not mean it is forgotten or that it's not being worked on. It's just our office's goal is, as well as that of our detectives in various agencies, is to focus on making sure the case is as strong as it can be, and that we are, taking our time to do things diligently. And so while it may feel like it's taking a while to either, formally be filed as part of the court process or the investigation to be complete, or even if it's just a matter of getting through the court process, which can take some time, just hang in there because it's being worked on, it is being looked at. It's just sometimes that process can be very wearing on families, and can take a little bit, but it doesn't mean that it's going away or that we're not looking at something.
Well, has finding truth and seeking justice been consistent with what you thought it would be as a little girl?
It certainly has been that, and I would say more. I mean, not to sound kind of cheesy about it, but it was my dream job. And then since my first day here as a law student, it's been better than that. And it's been, I would say, hands down the most rewarding thing I could imagine doing, career-wise or otherwise, truly. And it's a privilege to get to work here and to work with our victims, our families, and those that trust us to kind of get them through this part of the process.
Well, being in special victims unit and being in homicides, you've seen a lot of traumatic things. Why are your passion for this job seems to be growing over time, not diminishing or turning into some sort of jaded perspective? Why is it that your passion for finding truth and seeking justice and some of the most devastating cases in our community, why is your passion growing for it?
I think in hindsight, what drew me to this job was the idea of advocating for and fighting for somebody who maybe feels like their voice has been lost. And I think that's what drew me specifically to our special victims unit. And then now being on homicides, I've realized it really is the same, because the person most gravely impacted by the crime, literally their voice is not heard because they are no longer with us. And that, while it is certainly, you see devastation and grief on a daily basis, being able to step into that role and advocate for justice for that person and their family is truly the most rewarding thing. And it's also very humbling and particularly rewarding when we have families that stick with us through the process. And there's just something about all of those components that kind of fills your cup up, so to speak, as opposed to emptying it, and really just focusing on them and what it means to, as you put it, find truth, seek justice. That is what kind of invigorates you, I think, when you're meant for this job, as opposed to draining you.
Being a voice for somebody who has lost their voice as a result of being deceased now because of this incident that you're dealing with makes me think about Marcy's Law. Can you explain what Marcy's Law is and why it's so important?
So we have constitutional and statutory protections for victims, and obviously in the case of homicide, surviving loved ones of victims, and rights that are enumerated in those places that make sure they're supposed to be advised of their rights and what those entail, and have an opportunity to voice concerns, to be advised of court dates. There's a variety of components to that. And so, that can range from, hey, I want updates on every court date, to, having the opportunity to present an impact statement at a sentencing hearing and things like that. And the reason those aspects are important is because even if it's a victim of a different crime than a homicide, and, we've had some contact with them, or it is, family on a homicide case, it is very easy for their voice to get lost kind of in the court date to court date to court date. And it's our job to ensure that's not what happens, and to make sure they know they are not lost. And at any point, if you're feeling that way, that is something we're supposed to step up and remedy, and just make sure that voice is consistent in the process for them.
Yeah. Well, I know that you have a homicide case you're starting trial on today. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. And I think that it's important that people understand what all goes into homicide cases behind the scenes. And I think that it's very special for our office to have somebody in your position who, from the time of being a little girl, has desired to do this, and that your desire has been unwavering in the face of traumatic situations. So I know that we're better for it for you being here. And thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. We'll see you next time.